Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm David Johnson, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the Fulcrum Group. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what's new in Microsoft 365. And so I asked one of my questions earlier, but we'll go ahead and ask a couple more. So my first question is, how many of you are already using Office 365 or Microsoft 365 today? And if you are, put your answer in the chat, yes or no. Getting a few answers there. All right. The second question is, how many of you are regular users of Microsoft Teams? I'll just say Teams yes or Teams no. All right, got a lot of good answers there. So thanks again for attending today. As we move along in the presentation, if there's something that prompts questions, just throw those into chat, and Jeremy will kind of curate those questions, and then we'll make sure to answer them at the end of each presentation. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the second slide. All right, so a little bit about our agenda today. For those of you who aren't Fulcrum Group clients, we'll briefly touch on who the Fulcrum Group is, and then we're going to chat about some of the changes to Microsoft 365 over the past 10 years. We'll talk about some of the price increases that Microsoft introduced this year. We'll spend a little bit of time going over the various Microsoft 365 subscription plans. And then we'll go into some of the latest features of Microsoft 365. All right, so let's keep it moving. So a little bit about the Fulcrum Group. The Fulcrum Group was started by Steve Meek and myself all the way back in 2002. Steve, wave and say hello. There's Steve. All right. And we actually celebrated our 20th anniversary in March of this year with a nice little celebration party at Tornado Terry's Arcade. So got to play some video games, got to see some Dance Dance Revolution dance-offs, played some pool, and just generally had a good time. So thanks for all of our team for all the things they do for us. So our primary offering is our IT outsourcing solution called Spot Managed IT Services. But as you can see from this slide, we have offerings around cloud, VoIP, IT projects, and cybersecurity. And we've won our fair share of awards in the last few years. In other words, this ain't our first rodeo. So we've been there and done that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what's changed in Microsoft 365 in the past 10 years. To give Microsoft credit, they've been steadily improving the reliability and functionality of Microsoft 365 for the last 10 years. According to Microsoft, they've introduced more than 24 new applications and over 1,400 new features and capabilities during these last 10 years. So I'll cover some of these in more detail later in this presentation. Microsoft Teams alone is probably worth $8 to $10 per month compared to Zoom and some of the other collaboration and communication tools on the market. Microsoft has also invested heavily in the security and compliance arena. As the largest provider of cloud applications, Microsoft is a huge target. So they have put a massive effort into improving cybersecurity within the Microsoft 365 suite. As a heavy Microsoft 365 user myself, I love all of the AI powered features that make my emails, Word documents, and PowerPoint presentations so much better. Tools like Power BI, Stream, and OneDrive are some of the other new apps that get used quite a bit in our business on a regular basis. So I'm going to ask the audience another question here. What's your favorite Microsoft 365 feature or app? And I'm going to make it a little bit trickier. It can't be Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or Outlook. So something other than the basic apps. Sway, I like that one. Good one. Teams and OneDrive. All right. Power BI, Stream, SharePoint. Love to see all these people using things more than just the basic features. So that's awesome. So now let's talk a little bit about the price increase that Microsoft had. And so, of course, they've added a lot of features. There's been, with most businesses, and Microsoft is no different. They've had a lot of inflation and cost increasing, especially around the labor side of things. And it's been a long time since they've had a price increase. And so before we get into the price increase, we're going to talk a little bit about the different subscription types. First up is Microsoft 365 for Business. It's designed specifically for organizations with fewer than 300 users. Microsoft 365 Business Basic is typically for your email-only users or low-use users that are okay with using web versions of the Office apps. Business Standard, we see that with a lot of typical Office users. It includes the cloud apps and desktop apps, but it lacks some of the cybersecurity features that we recommend. So for most clients, we recommend Microsoft 365 Business Premium. It has the best combination of features and cybersecurity capabilities. And if you have users that don't need cloud applications or email, you can give them Microsoft 365 apps so that they'll have access to the latest Office desktop applications. Next up, we've got Microsoft 365 for Enterprise. And these are for larger organizations because you can have unlimited subscriptions. Your Office 365 E1 is a legacy. In other words, it will probably be sunsetted at some point in the next year or two, but it's your legacy hosted email and cloud services with no desktop apps. Your E3 is your legacy hosted email and cloud services plus desktop apps and some compliance features. And then if you go to O365 E5, that adds voice capabilities and some advanced analytics amongst other features. For most organizations, they're going to want to have what's called Microsoft 365, and that's kind of the newer types of subscriptions, and that's targeted at most of the clients that most of us work with. So hosted email is included in the F3. It also includes web versions of the Office applications, and it's targeted at those frontline workers, low use workers, field workers, those kind of folks who don't need a ton of functionality. The Microsoft 365 E3 is the most common enterprise subscription. It has the best combination of features and security. And if you want to bump up to E5, that would add voice PBX and some other enterprise features as well. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the price increases. So the price increases went into effect on March 1st of this year, and depending on when your contract ended on the old program and the new program, that price increase might have gone in effect back in March, or it could have been sometime over the summer or even more recently. So Microsoft has increased their monthly subscription cost on several of the most popular subscriptions. One of the biggest changes is that Microsoft will consider annual subscriptions as the standard agreement term. So if you want to have the best pricing, you got to have an annual agreement. Even if you're paying monthly, it's still an annual agreement with Microsoft. If you want to go month to month, the prices are going to be even higher, on average about 20% more than the monthly subscription rates that you see there. So there's a lot to digest there. We'll talk a little bit about some of the gotchas that you have to worry about as well. So this is a list of things to kind of keep in mind. It's not a complete list, but it's definitely things that we take a look at. So, you know, one of the things that I recognize from this is that Microsoft has mainly put all these things in to protect themselves. So customers and partners like the Fulcrum group, you know, probably are getting a little bit of the short end of the stick. But you know, it is what it is. So we're gonna work through it. In the past, customers were on month-to-month contracts and could easily switch from one Microsoft partner to another. But now you'll be under contract with your current Microsoft partner for 12 months at a time. If you try to switch during the middle of that and you don't pay your bill, your current Microsoft partner would be able to suspend your services for non-payment. So be careful about that. The other thing that you have to be aware of is that if you do have an annual contract, at the end of your contract, there'll be a 5-day cancellation window, and so that's 5 days, not 5 business days. So when there's if you want to increase or decrease subscriptions, that's the time to do it. But you've only got that short 5-day window. So down here it says 72-hour window, but that's actually been changed recently. So but I'll update that before I send out this the copy of the presentation. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about some of the different features. So with Microsoft Teams, you know, it's really the biggest addition to the Microsoft 365 suite of cloud services. It was actually introduced prior to the COVID pandemic, but adoption and usage has increased exponentially as organizations have embraced remote working scenarios. It's used heavily in many organizations, often as the primary communication tool, in some cases even more than email. And there's been a lot of new features added in 2022. In addition, there's been some really nice refinements and tweaks in existing features over the last few months. And so I've got another question for the audience. What's your favorite Teams feature? Just throw it in chat. My favorite feature is the fact that I can just go into Teams and I can do a search, and I can search all of my previous chats for any communications by keywords, and that really helps me find things that I talked about previously. So that's a great feature for me. Dan says everything. Z says everything. Like it. All right, and one of the features we're going to try before the end today is we're going to try to get a together mode with everybody. So we'll get everybody to turn their cameras on later, and we'll do a snapshot of that. So one other feature that that I'd like to talk about briefly is the Microsoft Teams phone system. And so so far we've had limited success with using it as a phone system. It's still a little bit limited on the functionality. So if you're thinking about that, just kind of keep that in mind as you're looking forward to that. it's a little bit clunky and cumbersome from our experience, but it will continue to get better over time. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about SharePoint and OneDrive. So Microsoft has really done a great job of making these two products work together. So, and these two have been have seen a lot of growth in usage since the start of the pandemic. These two apps working together allow organizations to access their files anywhere, anytime, with any device. SharePoint Online is the engine behind your file libraries that have similar functionality to traditional file shares on a server. And then OneDrive is the app that runs on your local computer that syncs changes from your local machine to the SharePoint cloud and vice versa. And OneDrive is also used for your home drive, where you store documents and files that will follow you wherever you go. And so the question for everybody here is, have you migrated your file shares to SharePoint and OneDrive yet? Just a quick yes or no on that one. And Microsoft has released more than 20 new apps and 1,400 features in the last 10 years. We don't have time to cover them all today, but here are a few more. Intune is Microsoft's mobile device management tool. It's great if you have corporate-owned laptops, smartphones, and tablets. Bookings. Your sales team and your service team will love using Bookings to share your calendar with customers and vendors. Power BI, I think I saw Rodney earlier saying that was his favorite app, and allows you to connect to data sources such as Excel files and SQL databases, and then use Power BI to visualize the data somewhere. I think maybe Steve said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I think he was the one that said that originally. Security and compliance, and this is an area where Microsoft literally spends billions of dollars. You might have heard the headlines recently about an outage with Rackspace and their hosted Exchange customers. Many of these customers have been down for over a week, and it's not clear if they will ever have access to all of their email again. And then artificial intelligence, it comes in many forms. But when I was creating this PowerPoint, for instance, the PowerPoint app would suggest cool designs based on my content. And that's just one small example of how Microsoft is implementing AI. All right, that was the first portion of our event today. That was our first presentation. So now let's get to some questions. Jeremy, did we have any questions in chat so far?
Not really, just responses to the questions that you had.
Okay. All right.
There was
Well, who's got
Rodney
a
was
question?
asking about info for better secure the tenant.
Okay.
You saw before.
We're going to definitely talk about the security side of things in our second presentation. So we'll hold that for then. What else? What other questions do we have here?
DJ had added that he'd love to discuss training and setup for SharePoint.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing that any organization that's going to be migrating to OneDrive and SharePoint, training is a core part of that because of a little bit of functionality changes, a little bit of the interface changes and how things work, and ways that you can get maximize your value out of how that work. With the ability to do collaboration within documents together, the ability to share the live versions of documents where people can edit them directly from those links. There's a lot of really great features there.
Rodney had added DLP gives too many false positives.
Yeah, I think that's with a lot of security systems. those are always challenges that you have to deal with, is the weeding through the volume of alerts and trying to figure out what's legitimate and what's not, right? So.
Yolanda says, thinking about using SharePoint for intranet.
And that was what SharePoint was originally, targeted towards, was intranets. And it's kind of funny how, people use it more for the file shares nowadays than they do for intranets. But there's a ton of great features there. You can, especially if you have Power BI or other tools where you've got dashboards that you built out, you can share those within those things as well. So. DJ says he's been asked about an intranet as well. So tools that you already have, you can just use some of the templates to build those out. What about you, Ryan? Any questions that you get commonly from your clients? Sorry, calling on my people here.
I think from a client perspective, I think most people, they don't know what they don't know. I think there's like a fear of what are the features out there? Like, what can it do for us? What problems can it solve for us today that we're not taking advantage of? Whether that's SharePoint or OneDrive or even To Do. I saw some people mentioning the To Do thing in the chat. So I think there's just so much untapped capability that we think of Office as just, Word and Excel, the traditional apps, and there's a lot of other stuff that it can do. And a lot of people they just don't know what it's capable of. So they don't know what low hanging fruit is out there, or what are they not taking advantage of right now.
Right. Yolanda asked, how secure is email encryption in Office 365? Do we need to add any other layers? So first on that is that not all subscription types include encryption. And I think the functionality is called, is it called or something, OME, Office and Mail Encryption, I think. And it's available, I think, in the Business Premium and the E3 subscriptions on the enterprise side. And it allows you to, to send securely, and it's you don't have to add any other layers to it. It has everything that you need. The functionality is a little bit clunky, so a lot of times we'll use a third-party email encryption solution that's a little bit simpler, but it definitely has everything that you need. And of course, Microsoft tries to do encryption end to end whenever it can, but it's not something that's guaranteed. So if you're sending a normal email and you want to send sensitive information, you definitely want to use some type of email encryption solution. How do you keep SharePoint files from being URL probed once a shared link is created? I think the good news is we get to leave that up to Microsoft, right? So if you're sharing a file externally from your organization, there are permissions that you can set up on those files as you're sharing them to limit who can see them, those kind of things. But we are definitely relying on Microsoft to make sure that those URLs are secured. So I think I would put my trust in Microsoft over just about any other cloud vendor today, just because of the fact that they're the ones seeing the most threats, and so they've got the most threat intelligence, and they're spending a ton of money to protect themselves and us, of course. All right, we've got a few more minutes for questions. Any others?
We're definitely ahead of schedule, and just out of reference, the bulk of the people here are Fulcrum clients or customers. And so, and people from Fulcrum, obviously. So if you do have a question that you don't have you don't know the answer to, it's not a silly question. Feel free to share.
Yeah. That'll keep me from calling on people. I was going to look through the attendee list and see who else I could call on. So. All right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up this part of the presentation a little early so that we can do that. Jeremy, do we want to take a 5 or 10 minute break?
Yeah, let's do it. And if also if you haven't ordered on DoorDash, go ahead and